welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello, I'm Matt.
Hello, I'm Winnie.
Today we are looking at an article called Flight Risk, the Threat of Bird Strikes. So, when you're flying somewhere, a lot of people are, worried or don't trust the airplanes. Is flying something that you are afraid of?
I think I've mentioned this before when we were talking about certain vehicles. When I am not the one in control, it is a definite addition of anxiety and stress for me.
So even like a bus is what?
A bus, a train, a yacht, a boat, whatever it is. I'm actually not a fan of like vehicles and such because a lot of factors,
Yeah, there's a lot that can go wrong. But I think, airplanes compared to a lot of other vehicles are actually quite safe.
I think to me, thinking about an airplane being this big metal thing carrying all of these passengers or these people flying in the sky, I'm very scared of falling, I guess, is to put it shortly.
Okay, you're very afraid of the plane falling with you in it.
Yes.
All right, well, I guess that is
I wouldn't say that's an irrational fear, right?
Well, I think considering that planes are actually safer than, sitting in a car or a bus, and most people don't fear riding in a car or bus same way they fear flying in a plane. So it is a slightly irrational fear in that sense.
Perhaps you've just watched too many action movies that take place in planes.
All right, well, we're going to learn about one more thing for you to be afraid of.
Yeah, exactly.
We're in today's article after this.
It's commonly said that flying is safer than boarding a bus or taking a train. While this may be true, there are certain dangers unique to flying. Bird strikes are one of these risks. A bird strike is a collision between a moving plane and one or more birds. Bird strikes can happen at any time during a flight, but are most common during takeoff and landing, when the plane is flying at lower altitudes. In the United States alone, a total of 16,960 animal strikes, most of which were bird strikes, were reported in 2022. That's roughly 46 a day.
Hello everyone, let's get into our article, part 1 of Flight Risk, the Threat of Bird Strikes.
It's commonly said that flying is safer than boarding a bus or taking a train. While this may be true, there are certain dangers unique to flying. Bird strikes are one of these risks.
Okay, so bird strikes can't happen to a train? You can't have birds flying into a train or a bus?
You know what? Yeah, that actually is very, possible too.
But I guess they just stop the train or bus then. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
A bird strike is a collision between a moving plane and one or more birds. Okay, so it's colliding, meaning it's hitting into something. So a plane is hitting one or more birds.
Yeah.
Bird strikes can happen at any time during a flight, but are most common during takeoff and landing, when the plane is flying at lower altitudes. Okay, so it's flying at lower altitudes, meaning lower height in the sky. It's not so high up that there's no birds up there.
Yeah.
So it's only in these lower altitudes where maybe birds are, themselves taking off and landing that a plane can hit them.
It makes sense because birds don't fly as high as planes usually do when they reach the maximum height. But it's kind of sad. Yeah, continuing on. In the United States alone, a total of 16,960 animal strikes, most of which were bird strikes, were reported in 2022. That's roughly 46 a day.
Okay, well, I never thought about the other kind of animal strikes that might happen. I guess you could have things like bats, other flying animals that you might also hit.
Okay, yeah. Or a dragon.
A dragon, yes, so that would cause some damage.
So we had our word roughly, which is our adverb, and it basically means a guess or something that's not very specific. So for example, you could say roughly 20% of people in the country voted for the new political party. So when we use the word roughly, no one's expecting a very specific number or answer. We're talking about a range. So they were saying roughly 46 a day, right? So that's a lot.
Yeah, that does make me, I'm not afraid of flying, but when you hear that there are 46 a day just in the United States, it does make you think a bit like this could happen.
Cause for concern.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know how much, maybe some of them are little birds, probably.
Maybe
that's sad for the birds,
yeah.
but
Maybe in the U.S. there's a concentration of birds, maybe.
There's more birds causing.
I hope no eagles or anything, because those are important birds for the U.S.
Yeah, well, I think when they mentioned in there that this can be one or many birds, I think the major concern would be that if there is a flock of birds.
Yeah.
So I think eagles aren't as big of a concern, although a large eagle hitting a plane would cause some damage.
Yeah.
But I think the concern is when there's many birds together in a group or a flock, it could cause some problems.
Because as we know, usually birds who maybe in the wintertime, they start to travel, right? And that could do some damage and kind of clog all of the gears and stuff. But I guess we'll have to see right after the break.
All right, see you then.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这2天的课程主题很有趣，是关于机场如何避免鸟击危机。人们常说搭飞机比搭公车、搭火车安全，虽然这有可能是真的，但是呢，坐飞机还是有一些特定的危险。那么鸟击就是其中一种。鸟击是指说移动中的飞机跟鸟之间的碰撞，那这有可能发生在飞航期间的任何时候。不过在起飞和降落期间最常见，因为飞机是在比较低的高度飞行。那事实上，光是在美国2022年，总共就通报了这个将近17000起的动物撞击事件，其中大多数都是鸟击。那平均起来一天大约就有这个46起了。好，单字 roughly 它是副词，表示大约、大概或是粗略地。那么 Winnie 老师刚刚在提到鸟类的聚集时，他用到 concentration 这个名词 ，concentration，concentration 可以表达集中、聚集或是汇集。那这边2个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 It's said that 主词加动词，这是表达据说怎么样怎么样。这个句型是用来表示一般大众想法，或者是无法明确知道究竟是谁说的。那么虚主词 it 是代指 that 子句，我们其实也可以把 that 子句的主词移到句首，把它写作主词 be said to 加原形动词。例如 It's said that a monster lives in the lake， 也可以说A monster is said to live in the lake。 据说那座湖里住着一只怪物。好，第2个重点是 when 当关系副词的用法。关系副词 when 相当于 in which 或是 on which 或是 at which， 引导形容词子句来修饰或补述说明跟时间有关的先行词。那我们来看看它的用法。首先第一个，当这个先行词它是特定时间时，我们就不用限定范围咯，所以用非限定用法来补述说明。这时候 when 的前面要加逗号。例如 Mr. Kent retired in 2005 when his son graduated from college. Mr. Kent 在2005年退休，那一年他儿子大学毕业，所以我们这边也用逗号把后面的关系子句隔开。第2个是当先行词是非特定时间时，我们就要限定它的范围咯，所以要用限定用法来修饰。那么 when 的前面不加逗点。例如 Pam still remembers the day when she first met her husband. Pam 还记得她初次见到她老公的那一天。好，那接回到课文中。
Although the vast majority of bird strikes do not cause serious damage to planes, some do. For instance, in 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 struck a flock of geese after taking off from LaGuardia Airport. This strike totally incapacitated both of the plane's engines. Famously, Flight 1549 then had to make an emergency landing on the Hudson River in the middle of New York City. Geese are large birds, but even smaller species can cause significant damage, like broken windows. As for the birds themselves, these strikes are almost always fatal.
Okay, so a quick recap of our first part. We learned about a new term called bird strikes. And that's not when birds go to protest something, although it sounds like it. But bird strikes are basically when one or more birds kind of get in the way or hit an airplane, which is kind of sad and unfortunate, but...
Maybe the airplane got in their way.
You know what? That's the way to look at it.
All right, so continuing with our article. Although the vast majority of bird strikes do not cause serious damage to planes, some do.
Yep, I've heard of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the vast majority do not cause damage. So vast is an adjective that means a very large part of something. Usually we think of a vast landscape as being very expansive and very big. You can't see the end of it. It's so big. So for example, the library is filled with a vast number of books.
Right, and then that brings us to our second word, which is majority, our noun, and it means a larger number or portion of something. So for example, the majority of the houses in this town were built before 1900. So when we're saying a vast majority, we're talking a big part of it, a big chunk of it.
Right, so it's not just a majority, which could just be over 50%, but it's the vast majority, means it's like 90%, somewhere around there.
Yep.
It doesn't happen that often.
Yep. So continuing on. For instance, in 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 struck a flock of geese after taking off from LaGuardia Airport. This strike totally incapacitated both of the plane's engines. So this word incapacitated basically just means it prevents something from being able to work or happen. Or, you know, so in this case, they couldn't use the plane anymore. It couldn't work because the destruction was so severe.
Famously, Flight 1549 then had to make an emergency landing on the Hudson River in the middle of New York City.
That is insane.
You know, yeah, do you know they actually made a movie about this?
Captain Sully, right? Or just Sully?
I don't remember the name of the movie, but I do remember that they made this movie where the pilot had to think very quickly and find a way to land the plane and saved all the people on board.
Fortunately, there was a big body of water, aka the Hudson River. Otherwise, it could have gone really bad. Yeah.
So we have a word in there which is emergency. Emergency is a noun and it means a situation that is often dangerous and serious and usually requires immediate attention. So something needs to be done about this thing to fix it.
Right away.
Right away. So for example, Amanda reminded her daughter to call 911 if there was an emergency.
Yes, everyone should remember this.
Remember to call that emergency number wherever you are.
I guess 119 here.
Right, 119. In North America, it's usually 911. So we are always taught as children to remember to call 911 when there's an emergency.
Good rule to have. Continuing on, geese are large birds, but even smaller species can cause significant damage, like broken windows. As for the birds themselves, these strikes are almost always fatal.
Oh, okay, so that's too bad. I mean, I'm glad they're usually fatal for the people on board the plane, but it's too bad that these incidents, you know.
I wonder how much of a big chunk of bird populations have been affected since the invention of planes.
Right, because birds were flying in the air a lot longer than people were flying in planes. So maybe, you know, we can't blame the birds for being in the air.
They were there first.
That's true.
So then we have our word significant, and it is an adjective. And it can mean, for example, a lot, Or it could mean something notable or a great amount of something. It can also mean something that is very important or meaningful. So for example, we can say, the book has had a significant influence on American culture ever since it was written.
So as we just said, these bird strikes are usually fatal for the birds. Fatal is an adjective and it means causing death. So when we say that these are fatal for the birds, we mean that the birds die when this happens.
Not a good ending.
No. So another example sentence, the car accident proved fatal for the driver.
I think these are just one of those things that with the invention of, all of these things that man has created, this is unfortunately just a side effect. Yeah, it's kind of unfair, but it's, it's sad.
All right. Well, we've learned quite a bit about bird strikes today, but we're going to learn more when we get into part 2 when we see you next time.
Bye-bye.
绝大多数的鸟击不会对飞机造成严重损害，不过有些情况还是会哦。像在2009年，全美航空1549号班机从拉瓜蒂亚机场起飞后，撞上了一群雁，造成飞机2具引擎完全失去作用。那这架班机不得不紧急迫降在纽约市中心的哈德逊河上，这算是碰到大型鸟类了。不过就算是比较小的物种，也有可能会造成可观的损害，可能像是窗户破裂等等。那至于鸟类本身，这些撞击几乎对它们来说都是致命的。好，单字 vast。Vast 是形容巨大的、大量的、广大的。Majority 这个名词则表示大部分、多数。Emergency 是紧急事故、突发事件。那么 significant 则是形容显著的、可观的、重要的。Winnie 老师在解释单字时用到 notable 这个形容词 ，Notable 可以形容著名的、显著的。下一个单字 fatal 是形容致命的，或者是后果极为严重的。那这边有一个重点，我们进入文法时间。这边我们来学习 as for 表示至于、关于，那它是片语介系词，后面可以接名词啊、动名词或者是名词子句。举例来说 ，John and his girlfriend are here. As for the others, they will arrive later. John 和他的女朋友已经到了，那至于其他人，他们晚点会到。好，那以上这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
It's commonly said that flying is safer than boarding a bus or taking a train. While this may be true, there are certain dangers unique to flying. Bird strikes are one of these risks. A bird strike is a collision between a moving plane and one or more birds. Bird strikes can happen at any time during a flight, but are most common during takeoff and landing, when the plane is flying at lower altitudes. In the United States alone, a total of 16,960 animal strikes, most of which were bird strikes, were reported in 2022. That's roughly 46 a day. Although the vast majority of bird strikes do not cause serious damage to planes, some do. For instance, in 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 struck a flock of geese after taking off from LaGuardia Airport. This strike totally incapacitated both of the plane's engines. Famously, Flight 1549 then had to make an emergency landing on the Hudson River in the middle of New York City. Geese are large birds, but even smaller species can cause significant damage, like broken windows. As for the birds themselves, these strikes are almost always fatal.
Hey, it's KiWi on the street. I'm Kiki.
And I'm Winnie. Say, Kiki, in English, we actually have a lot of phrases that we use that were from a long time ago.
That's right. And sometimes these phrases, they kind of seem like they don't really make sense, but actually they're quite meaningful. So today we are going to learn some new phrases. All right, let's work on some phrases. I've got 2 phrases. Which one is the correct one? 发现有机会可乘，乘人之危。
趁人之危。
乘人之危。
Taste blood. Oh man, I don't know.
When you're really angry.
Maybe smell blood? I don't know. Smell blood.
Smell blood. So I guess taste blood.
Smell blood.
Smell blood. Okay, she got that quick, but is she correct? Ding, ding, ding. She's correct. Smell blood. Okay. Then we have
表现出色，高分过关。
so pass with flying colors or pass with flying flags.
Pass with flying flags. Pass with flying colors.
Pass with flying colors.
Pass with flying flags.
先卫星。
不知道。第二个。
This one, flags. And let's see if you are correct. And
Good guess.
Pass
Thanks.
with flying colors. All right, what did we learn today? We learned some new phrases today, so let's take a look at them. The first one is smell blood. And this is when somebody recognizes that they have an advantage over someone else that may be weaker or more vulnerable than them. This phrase also implies that this weakness in the opponent will allow someone to gain a victory. Okay, the next one is pass with flying colors. This means to achieve something with great success. The term comes from nautical terms. And in the old days, the flags on the ships were called colors. So when a ship returned to its harbor, all the flags would be flying. That meant that they were successful in their journey. But if a ship returned with all the flags taken down, it means they didn't achieve what they set out to do. That's all the phrases we have today. KiWi later.